Jenny, welcome to the Soccer Podcast USA. You are not just the guest panelist, but it looks like you might be the guest co-host today. So we'll see where Lori is.
Amazing.
Thanks. Hey, and here's our call of the week. Lori Lindsay is our surprise guest.
Yay!
Yay! Hi,
I
Lori.
love how it seems like I'm the surprise guest of how late I am. Goodness gracious. Sorry, everybody.
I introduced her as our co-host for the day, and then you're our surprise guest.
Yay! Hi, Jenny. Great to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Yeah. Wait, do you guys know each other?
I actually haven't met in person. No.
Wow, that's insane. So I've just followed Jenny and everything that she does. I was talking to Kev, our producer, before, and I was like, yeah, she's done this and this and this, and then there's this alliance and all of this stuff. So, all right, well, Lori, Jenny, Lori, do you guys know of each other?
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh,
Wonderful to meet you. Thanks for joining. And my apologies. I'm leaving for LA for the Euros. And I have a lot of moving pieces today. So
what do you mean you're leaving for 30 days? You got a bunch of stuff to pack.
That's awesome.
Exactly.
I'm excited for you.
Oh, thank you. Very
well, Lori, we've already covered with Jenny. She's like me. We don't remember names, faces, places, dates, etc. So like this whole episode will be forgotten by 2/3 of us. So
that's why we're recording it.
Yes, exactly.
We're recording it. Yeah. We'll take a snapshot. It happened. We'll leave it on the gram. And that's how we'll know that it's occurred. But yeah, no, I mean, Jenny, introduce yourself to the world because I know who you are, but I want to make sure the world knows who you are.
Oh, you bet. Jenny Nguyen, founder and CEO of the Sports Bra here in Portland, Oregon. We are the world's first sports bar 100% dedicated to women's sports. And then last year we announced that we were going to franchise nationwide. And just a few weeks ago, we announced our first 4 franchise cities. So we're really excited to kind of blow it up. But we've kind of unknowingly started a brand new market for the hospitality industry, which is women's sports bars. And that has dramatically helped to increase visibility, representation, inclusive spaces, and just giving homage to women's sports and also the fandom surrounding it. And then creating new fans, of course, by having these amazing family-friendly spaces. So yeah, that's kind of prior to the Sports Bra, I was a chef, and that was like my only career. Was cooking in kitchens for about 15 plus years. And then I was a basketball player from about the age of 6 years old until about 3 weeks after I opened the doors to the Sports Bra.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, why no more? Is it just the sports bra is taking up too much of your time? Is that why you're not playing, or?
Yeah, I mean, I like to kind of blame the sports bra, but it's also that I'm 45 years old now, and so my knees are just like
just blame it on the sports bra.
I blame it on the sports bra. I mean, there's totally women who are kicking ass and they're in their 60s, playing ball still. So I'm not gonna fully blame my old age, but yeah.
Listen, I completely understand, Jenny, because I was just playing in TST. Well, I say playing, but I promoted myself to the front office, our general manager / sporting director role, because of the exact same thing. I'm 45 and I was just like, this feels like my body doesn't like the warm up, the start and stop. It's just like, let me like relieve myself of those duties and just like hand it over to the younger players. So I feel you on that one.
I do love that you promoted yourself to GM position. Like, I feel like I should let the players be GM for the day and just for them to figure it's not as glamorous as everyone thinks it is. Oh, awesome. Well, Jenny, what are the 4 places that just expanded? I can't remember that off my top of my head because we've already confirmed that none of us remember things.
Of course. Yeah. So well, my PR person brilliantly coined it as the starting 5, with Portland being kind of the first one. And then we've got Las Vegas, Indianapolis, St. Louis, and Boston.
Nice.
And then we just got news of the WNBA expansion today to the 3 cities, and we were just like, oh my gosh, yes, Philly. There's so much excitement. So much excitement.
Very cool. And also I'm from Indianapolis, so this makes me very excited too. And obviously with the Pacers for men's basketball, just making it in NWA. Oh my God, what? NBA finals. This is hilarious. That should just be like a highlight reel here. And then obviously with Caitlin Clark, the WNBA, and so just a lot of exciting stuff for the women's sports around the country. But I'm curious though, because you're talking about being a chef, what was kind of the first moment, and then Christina, we can get back to those four different cities, but what was kind of the driving factor to open up the sports bar in Portland? And also, in addition to that, how were you experiencing sports prior to that, that kind of were like, this is a need, in terms of like, let's open up this bra, oh my God.
It's working.
Something
Headphones,
is
guys.
wrong now.
Lori
My
gets paid
mind
to
is
talk
like,
live on TV.
yeah, exactly. I do this for a living and I cannot get it correct. Um, I just had a meeting prior to this for an hour, so I'm like, maybe I'm tucked out. Um,
We should get
but
you
I think you
candy.
understand my question, but let me say it more specifically. How were you consuming women's sports prior or not, right? In terms of being out and about, were you watching at home? That was like, okay, this is the driving force then, that we need this place to bring in the community.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, first things first is I, grew up playing basketball, huge fan, and I also born and raised in Portland. And so at a very young age, my dad has always been a huge soccer fan. He grew up playing soccer in Vietnam, wanted me to be a soccer player. I tried it, terrible at it. Every time the ball came near me, I grabbed it and dribbled it. So not a future in soccer for me, but he took me to the University of Portland games as a kid, and we watched
Very
Eminem
cool.
play, which is Shannon McMillan and Tiffany Milbritt.
Yep.
And then those games were, I remember going there at a young age and having never seen like thousands of people show up for a women's sporting event before. And then he took me to the UP games when, the Rapinoe sisters and Sinclair were there. And it was the same thing, like 5,000 people, or what felt like 5,000 people to me, were just packed in there watching soccer. And then when we got the ABL, the Portland Power, and the WNBA came the first time around, with the Portland Fire, thousands of people showed up for those games as well. And so I kind of grew up with this feeling that Portland really showed up for women's sports. And then meanwhile, I was playing basketball, developing just a true, like, I feel like it's my first true love. And then all of my friends and everyone I knew, acquaintance wise or anything, like in my adult life, they were all through basketball. And so as we got older, we wanted to party, we wanted to hang out, drink some beers. And so we'd go to sports bars, and our shared desire was to watch women's sports on TV. And it was a constant battle to whether you were going in there and asking for them to change a channel, and maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. Sometimes, these are spaces that don't always feel welcoming to folks like me. Our group was kind of a hodgepodge group of women and non-binary folks, pretty diverse. And so I can imagine that very rarely would we ever go to a sports bar on our own, like as individuals, just out of fear of safety or fear of like being singled out somehow.
Yep.
And so as I got older and older, it was just like, gosh, I wonder if there's another way, if there could be another way, because it felt like my friends, the best way that we were ever watching women's sports was in somebody's basement streaming it, or we were what's kind of termed an ISO fan now, is somebody who's like an isolated fan. They're a huge fan of women's sports, but they do it on their iPhone, or they do it on their laptop. They're really active in communities online, but there's not really a public space to do it in unless you're buying a ticket and going to an arena. So when I kind of gathered all of that stuff together, it was right after the pandemic, and I was just like, man, people really need community. It felt like people really needed community, and after the pandemic more than ever. So we opened right on the tail end of like the Delta variant. We opened in April of 2022. So it was still pretty risky, especially in Portland. But I was kind of like, oh, I wonder how other women's sports bars have done, when I started to really think about it. And so I started to Google online, and it was shortly after that I realized that nobody had done it. And so there wasn't any research on how these bars, if they're successful or if people have tried it or whatnot. I couldn't find anything. And so I was just like, oh no. So that even that threw another wrench into the system, which was that I was going to be trying something that hadn't been done before. And that was pretty scary. It was already scary to think about opening a business, let alone a bar and restaurant after a pandemic. But yeah, so growing up in Portland, really felt the love for women's sports, but still really felt like I was taking a leap of faith, putting it together. And I kind of was just like, what, if this lasts a couple years and kind of like knocks people's socks off for a little bit, it'll be worth it. Like, let's go for it. So that's kind of how it happened. And, from T minus day one, as soon as we even just like went public with the fact that we were opening, it was just like lights out. media publicity. People just like lost their minds. We got the doors open via a Kickstarter campaign, so crowdfunding campaign, because I didn't have the money. You know, it's just like everybody poured in from all corners, and it was really just a community. It was built on the backs of the community, you know. And I, as a chef, I knew a little bit about restaurants, but I didn't know anything about business, and so I really need a lot of help from the community in that space as well.
Jenny, we're going to be for CBS August 10th, I think is the date. Sunday, August 10th. Kate Scott, she does play-by-play for actually the Sixers. She lives here in Philadelphia as well. Maybe you've heard her name, but we're doing the CBS games together this season, and so we'll be there for the Portland Thorns. I forget who they're playing off the top of my head, but I'll just mark that because maybe on that Saturday we can come in, visit you all.
Swing by, please. That would be amazing.
Love to.
I feel like I'm joining this this hangout here because I'm never gonna show up. CBS is like, wait, we didn't pay you to fly out for this game. I'll be like, don't worry about it. I'll just expense it later.
Yes, you did. You didn't know.
Yes, you
yes,
did.
You
You guys forgot to put it on the schedule. It's okay. I edited that non-editable schedule myself.
I love it.
Oh man. I mean, Jenny, like you do things that are impossible. You do things that are difficult. You do things that are insane, and you're my kind of person. So like, I've just been following your story the whole time. I think you hit that on the head. Like Lori and I talk about it on the show multiple times, but like Portland knows how to do women's sports. Hard stop, right? Like people would ask me all the time, like, what's the equivalent when I was doing international stuff in the United States that's equivalent to the rest of the world with regard to fandom? And I said, the Pacific Northwest. I'm like, particularly Portland. Leave it to, you know, Portland's fan base for knowing how to heckle me and when to heckle me when I was refereeing appropriately.
For sure.
It was an intimidating
Ruthless.
group, but like it was so good because I was like, gosh, that's football, right? Like that's what it feels like around the world. And I would always tell people that's the closest. So like, I mean, I'm glad I didn't know you back then because I would always probably want to go to the bar with you after. Then I'd get in trouble because I'd probably be hanging out with people I shouldn't be. While I was supposed
There's
to be
still
neutral.
time.
Yeah. Oh no, now I can. I violated all the rules. I talk to players now. I talk to agents now. I don't have the referee rules on me anymore, but no, seriously, thank you for everything you do. I mean, it's ridiculous. One of the questions I did have was, and it's like I said, there's a bigger story and a longer story about like, this has always been in the back of my mind to being a women's sports bar here in Tampa Bay itself. Cause my diabolical plan that's now privy to the world is I want to make, you know, Tampa home for women's sports. Right. And we have Tampa Bay Sun here, and that was the first major one. And obviously I want WNBA, PWHL, right? Softball, volleyball, the whole thing. That being said, can you show women's sports pretty much all times that you guys are open? Is there enough women's sports out now to be able to do that? Or do you have to fill it in with some men's sports? Because that's what some people, I love the naysayers. So like, you're going to have to do both in order to increase it. I'm like, do I? So I get to ask you, do you have to do both, or can you stay with just women's sports and there's enough?
We definitely do not do both. We're very strict about it. The only time we ever do it is when there's like, what is it? Like co-ed sports. Like sometimes pickleball is co-ed or something like that. And then there's other sports that really the cameras are always switching back and forth. Like track and field events tend to be men's and women's at the same time. Swimming can also be that way as well. And we'll just leave it on. What's another really, tennis generally, if there's a big open, it'll switch back and forth and we'll just leave it on. But otherwise we don't make an exception for men's sports. And when it comes to, is there enough women's sports on? I will never say there's enough women's sports on.
Love it.
We're just getting started. There's so much work to be done, but when we opened in 2022 to what we have access to now, it is dramatically different. So I will pay like hardcore kudos to the networks and to what I believe are really strong women in powerful positions, helping to put women's sports on the big screens, and the allies, of course. But I think that there is just so much room for growth. Right now, you know, I mean, you can talk to any of the other women's sports bars that are opening up, but one of the biggest talking points is how can you afford to get all of the streaming in? How can you afford to, because those are things that men's sports bars are not having to do. There's like packages, there's sports packages on cable that add 23 channels. They're all men's sports. And then for women's sports, there's like 48 streaming channels, and streaming is generally just for private use or personal home use and not for commercial business use. So there's also navigating the legal ramifications of streaming sports as well.
Yeah, so much, right? So much.
There's a lot.
That's what I'm curious about, because even just since 2022, I mean, the explosion of women's sport, right? And I second what Christina just said about how much you've done. So thank you, because it's so needed within communities, right? We all want to watch at our homes, but also just to feel such like a part of something when you're out and about and a place to go is just has been so needed, and such like a lovely aspect to women's sports fans.
It's really
And
a
we
game
haven't had
changer
that.
to create those
Yep.
environments. Hmm.
Exactly, 100%. And I'm just curious, in a positive way, because I'm sure you get asked about the challenges all the time, but in a positive way, what has been so surprising? But you're like, yep, let's keep going, right? Or this is exciting. This is what fuels me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, ever since day one, it has been a constant surprise. Like I feel like I grossly underestimated everything about the sports bra. Um, it's nuts. And even when I feel like I've dreamt big, I haven't dreamt big enough. I'm a
So
pretty
cool.
conservative person anyway. Um, and so it has its pros and cons on being surprised about things. But generally, the amount of support, both very locally, like from our neighbors, to globally, has been
Mm,
out of this world. And so I think that one thing that was really surprising to me was I could imagine a world where the sports bra was making, having collaborations or partnerships with other women's sports leagues, teams, local community teams and things like that. But the idea that, and it, like the space hadn't existed before. And so when we created that space, it really became like the nexus for like anything to do with women and sports and more. So like where
Hmm.
those two things align is just like an epic explosion of all different kinds of things. So like the amount of partnerships, organizations that we work with, some of them have nothing to do with women or sports, but there's some kind of an alignment that has occurred at the sports bra. So
Hmm.
that's something that was really surprising to me. Like,
That's cool.
early on somebody was just like, "Jenny, how does it feel to have a seat at the table?" And I was just like, great, like the ability to have representation, to speak on certain issues that I feel like haven't gotten spoken about. But not only that, but I felt like the sports bra had become a type of table in and of itself, to gather other people and other thoughts to come together and just like create something really beautiful. And of course, I want to say that nobody does these things alone. You know what I mean? Like I may
hmm
have come up with the idea, I may have like pushed like the go button, but behind all of the success and everything that has been the sports bra, it boils down to the team, the community. I mean, there are bartenders, servers, dishwashers, cooks, everybody that's doing the ordering, customer service, creating that environment, welcoming everyone in. Like those are the people who are doing the day to day, the grind, because
Hmm.
in and of itself, it is still quote unquote just a bar, but has become so much more. So all of those folks have really allowed me as a founder to grow this dream as big as I possibly can, and then loop in as many people as I can to get it as big as I can. But yeah, it's
So
Really.
been
cool.
it's been outstanding.
It's like a modern day Cheers, right? Like, is this like the modern day Cheers? Like, you go and everybody knows your name because, like, to your point, you've created this and you're bringing people in. So now it's a franchise model that could be. So I love it. The Big Five. Shout out to your publicist on that, your marketing person on that. But like,
For
it's
sure.
it's it's now a franchise. So it's like with that in my mind immediately I put on my business legal hat when I had seen you guys announce. I'm like, that's brilliant.
Mhm.
Now you guys can negotiate licenses. Now you guys can negotiate deals with, CBS. Yes, I'm looking at you guys. Give her something. Right? Like a Fox, ESPN, etc. to do packages and distribute it amongst the franchisees. That's kind of a cool thing. How are you guys gonna keep it? I guess I mean for you, what's the franchise model look like for you guys in that respect? Whether it's the community aspect side of it, how that build out works.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, from the moment we opened, people came through the doors and they were just like, Jenny, you need to franchise this. This is awesome. And I was very ignorant. I didn't know what franchising meant. So when I heard the word, all I can think of is these kind of soulless cookie cutter box
Mm.
stores. And I was just like, oh no, like this is my baby. The sports bra could not be more far from one of those soulless box stores. So I like cut it off right away. And I also wasn't sure, if the sports bra was even going to be viable. So I was just like, pump the brakes. This could be like the plateau of the hype and all that stuff, and who knows what happens in a couple years. Um, but as time went on, I kept hearing more and more about expansion, and then I really sat with it and thought, okay, what do I want? And then I was just like, do I have a, because I never thought that I was going to open more than one. I just figured I'd open one. And maybe, in a course of a decade or something, I might open more across like really major metropolitan cities, but I wasn't like in a hurry with my dream. Um, and so when I thought about it, I was just like, after experiencing every single day multiple people coming in and having just a transformative experience once they stepped into
Mm.
the space, it made me think, gosh, why wouldn't I want to share this with as many people as possible? And so I started to think about expansion, and I thought of it from the corporate expansion model, which was,
Mm.
me going around and opening these. And so I was just like, okay, let's look into that. And so the very first city that I thought we would expand to was Los Angeles. And so I actually spent quite a bit of time in LA, flying back and forth, meeting with different people, and like really deep diving on this expansion idea. And every time I came back to Portland, I was just like, I felt more and more like what's the word? Uncomfortable, or like
Hmm.
really kind of
Like
confused
unsettled.
about, like,
Yeah.
that's the word, thank you, very unsettled about it. And it's the opposite of what normally happens with me when I do a ton of research. I start to get more comfortable with it. It's something really scary, and then I learn about it, I'm like, okay, less scary. And the
Mhm.
opposite was happening. And so I took 5 days off, and I went out to the coast, the Oregon coast, and I just tried to free my mind. I was just like, took long walks. I only worked like a few hours a day, and I was just like, okay, let's try to reset. What do I love about the bra? What is it that I'm trying to do? And what it boiled down to was that I had spent basically my entire life here in Portland. And when I opened the sports bra, I inadvertently opened a space that was really connected to the community in an authentic way. And when I went to LA, like, I've been there maybe a handful of times. It would take me 25 years at least to
Mm.
figure out what the
Mm.
community wanted and craved in LA in a
God,
really
that
authentic
emotional
way.
intelligence is so good.
I mean, when I thought about it, I was like, okay, I could open in LA, but it would feel like the Sports Bra Portland in LA.
Yeah.
And maybe that could be successful, maybe, whatever. But to me, I really felt like, to do it justice, because the most beautiful thing to me about the sports bra here in Portland is the community and how
Mhm.
connected our team is to the people walking through the doors. And I was just like, man, that's the key. Like, I want connectedness to the community in an authentic way. And I felt like a general manager really couldn't do that. It has to be an owner operator. And so then I was just like,
Mm.
let me look into this franchising thing. And honestly, between me thinking about expansion and me looking into franchising, it probably took me 6 months of
Oh,
hardcore
okay.
researching LA. But it took me 6 months to get to the point of like, let's look into franchising. And I started researching, and I was just like, oh my gosh, the more I read about it, the more I was like, this is the way forward
Mm.
for the bra. Like, this
Yeah.
is how we can put this brand into like community oriented people who are embedded and who have connections. They know, they have a sense of what the community really needs, and they can be there and like live and breathe what the bra is
Yeah.
in their cities. And so that's kind of how it happened. It was a long process. I feel like I quote unquote wasted a bunch of time, but I needed that
No.
for myself to really learn what was
Yeah.
important to
I
me.
think that
Hmm.
and then you just feel it within your body, right? You just know it, like the connection, just going to the shore, like let me get out of my head and just
Yeah.
what feels right in this moment, and then you're
And it
able
felt
to
like
like,
the weight was like released. And
yeah,
even though franchising is an absolutely massive endeavor, um, it was just like, yeah, this is it.
yeah,
I mean, opening restaurants in other cities is also a massive endeavor. So
yeah. No, I would imagine so. That's something clearly that I have no understanding behind. But how much will you have? How much say will you have, or none at all? Is it um, will you be at all involved in these other cities?
yeah, so the
Oh,
cool thing
perfect.
about franchising is you can have as much or as little control as you want.
Yeah,
Some of these brands that I'm speaking about, they control almost everything. And so when you walk into a space, it feels just like any of the thousand of other stores you've been in. And with the sports bra, you know, at its core, we want that connectedness with the community and an authentic piece. And that's why we franchised. So we're giving a lot of like creative flexibility to like the space. There will be some key elements of the physical location that we will dictate so that there is
Okay.
like congruity.
Mm.
And then there are also key elements of the menu as well that will be the same so that folks
Nice.
can kind of know what to expect. And some of those recipes are really near and dear
Yeah.
to my heart. And so I'd want that like displayed, across the
Yeah.
country as
That
we
continuity
expand.
the continuity is really lovely as well, right? Because then it
Hmm.
just like it really, I think, to me, simplifies the community just in different places. So you're getting the flavors of the different cities, but you're also still very much feeling like whichever one you go to, you're like, oh, I'm at home, or I can
Exactly.
feel what this means. Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
if I'm walking in, I'm like, I'm home. This is amazing.
Although, like, if
I
Jenny,
love
if it
that.
comes to Ybor City here in Tampa, you're gonna have some Cuban infusion down here. I'm just gonna say.
Heard that. Heard that.
Okay,
Yep.
wait, I have a couple more questions, but Christina, do you?
No, you go. I
Okay.
have like soccer questions,
Okay,
but you
great.
go.
Yes. Okay. So let me just ask these two real quick. So one, and forgive me for not knowing this, but how did the name come about?
Mm.
Yeah. So the sports bra. Okay. So I am kind of a nerd. I love like Jeopardy. I love crosswords, word scrambles. Um, my secret power is dad jokes, which kind of drives everybody crazy, but I love it. So when it
Sounds like
came
a
to,
secret power.
right? It's like
I love dad jokes.
nobody knows it's a power. Um, and like puns, like that kind of stuff just cracks me up. Just like a 12-year-old boy.
Don't
But
go look at my social media. That's all I post. It's like dad
high
jokes on
five.
like
Yes,
dorky
you and me.
things.
I feel like a bestie relationship's coming.
This
Um,
is happening.
so there was a day in 2018, and that was kind of the first seed of the sports bra becoming like that was planted in my brain. And so in 2018, a group of friends of mine and I we gathered at a traditional sports bar to watch the NCAA women's basketball finals. And the game was out of this world. It was a like 20 plus point comeback, last second three-pointer to win it all. We just went crazy. We lost our minds. We high-fived. I threw my hat in the air, lots of jumping. Um, and then after that game was over, we were all in the parking lot saying goodbye to each other. And that was when, I said to somebody, the only way we're ever going to watch a women's sports game in its full glory or the way that it deserved to be watched was if we had our own place. And
Mm.
I said it out of like frustration. I said it because I was upset that we just watched this incredible game at a traditional sports bar on the smallest TV with no sound. Um, and that moment was never going to happen again. Right. And so I was like mad. And so I just blurted it out. Didn't mean that I was going to do it. I didn't mean anything other than me being frustrated. And either that day or the next day, I was driving by myself and I thought, man, if we did have our own place, what would we call it? And literally the first thing that popped into my mind was the sports bra. And to me, it was
Mm.
because, you know, at that time, I was just like, I wouldn't change anything about a sports bar except for what's on the TV. And, which eventually is not at all true. But at the time, I was just like, just change the channel. And so to me, it was just taking, that the smallest changes can create the biggest differences. And so I just
Mm.
took the word, the sports bar, and I just flipped those two letters and it made all the difference, like a
Yeah.
simple, tiny change. And then I said it to myself, I laughed, I LOL'd, and then I literally was like, ooh, I even have a motto for it. The sports bra, we support women. And I just like, I
Amazing.
cracked up and it
Yeah.
just stuck. And of course, in the next couple of days, I like told my girlfriend, she rolled her eyes, and then I tried to think of a better name, and I always came back to the sports bra, and I just thought it was catchy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and to this day, people will try to tell me about other sports bars, and they'll say sports bras, and I'll be
Yeah.
like, yes,
Okay, well, I'm
it's
so happy
working.
that I've already done that. I made that
I
same
know.
mistake, even though I actually don't think of it as a mistake. I feel like it's like the correction, so it's perfect.
Love it.
So
Love
here we
it.
are. Okay, this is my final question. Then Christina, I'll stop taking over the whole
Oh no,
conversation.
this is great. I love it.
Because the community and just thinking about this entire environment at the sports bra, it gets me excited. So I'm wondering if was a standout moment. I'm sure you're having them all the time, but maybe like a reaction from everybody or a moment where the place is packed and everybody's just so into the event that you're watching, and then the place erupts with excitement. Is there something that stands out that is forever embedded in your mind that's like, yes, this is what this is all about?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, there have been fortunately for me, hundreds of those moments.
Yeah.
But the ones that kind of stick out the most are the ones that happened early on because they were just so shocking. Like I had never experienced anything like it in my life. The very first one was a very quiet one. I was in the bra by myself prior to opening. And I spent a lot of time there, cleaning and doing all kinds of
Mhm.
shenanigans before the grand opening. But we had just gotten the cable guy in, and he hooked up the cable for the first time in the 5 TVs that we had there. And it was pretty late at night, and I had all, everything was locked up and closed, and just the bar lights were on. And I decided to like I looked on the calendar, and it looked like there was 2 NCAA women's basketball games on at the same time. And I sat back on the banquette, which is these seats that are underneath the trophy wall. And I turned on the 2 biggest TVs that are just above the bar. And I had one on one game and one on the other game. And I sat back and I was like, I started crying and I tried to figure out why it was. And it was because I had never been in a place where women's sports was the main attraction. That was the
Mhm.
show. And so here are these huge, like 60-inch screens showing women's sports. And this was a space that, I was paying rent on, that I was, scrubbing the floors on, that I was scrubbing pots and pans on. And like, I had friends coming in and helping me with all kinds of random stuff. So we were like, it was at the beginning and just kind of building what would become the sports bra. And that moment was just like very quiet. There was no one around. And I cherish that time because it felt like the first time I was just like, it felt really special to me, whether or not it
Mm.
was special to anybody else. It was really special
Mm.
as a personal moment.
That's cool.
So that's one that
Ugh.
stands out. So let's take a very solo moment to something that is a very like huge moment. Christina, I think this is when I was in DC for the Thorns being in the championship. So
Yep.
Julie Haddon was meeting with somebody from
Mhm.
Adweek at the Bra years ago while we were open, when we first opened. And she stops me while I'm like bussing tables and she's just like, "You're Jenny, the owner." I was like, "Yeah." And then she introduced herself and she was just like, "How would you like to come to the championship game? Like,
Mm.
I'll
Amazing.
help get you there." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Who are you?" And so of course I look her up and she's like huge.
Yeah.
So anyway, Julie invites me to this game, and this is months before we knew the Thorns were going to be there. And so as time went on, it was just like, oh my gosh, Portland's going to be there. And it was crazy because I like got on the plane and the Thorns were on the plane. I was just like, this is the best day of my life. Went to DC, went to the stadium, watched the game, and when we won, fireworks, everything went off. I ran down from my seats to where the Riveters were, which was our hometown
Mm.
hardcore Thorns fans. They flew
Hardcore.
like 350 people from Portland was
Wow.
in this like section. And so I ran down there and I like was cheering with them and they were like pointing, they were like the sports bra, like it. So it was like a moment, right? And I was so excited. And right then I got a phone call and it was one of my servers and she had FaceTimed me and she was FaceTiming me for live, like from the bra.
Stop.
So I open it up and she's at the bra and it's absolutely like sardines packed in there and everybody's screaming and yelling into the camera. And then I point the camera at the fans in DC. And so I'm thinking to myself, when has this moment ever occurred from coast to
Mm.
coast? This very very special moment. And I just got goosebumps, tears welling up behind my eyes. It was just like this really incredible moment. I wish I had the wherewithal to have hit record, but it was like a 10-second call. It was like
Nope. Enjoy the
everybody's
moment.
screaming. It was like everything's shaking. Um, and that to
That's
me was just like one of the very first like really huge experiences where I was just like, the sports bra is different. It's something incredible and special, and it's just something that I felt like wasn't it hadn't occurred before, like that
Mhm.
moment. So yeah, so from a super quiet moment to something that's like expansive. I wasn't even in the bar that day, and it was just,
And it still impacted you.
it was like life-changing for me. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Dear Lord, that's
Yeah,
crazy
that's
because that
super cool.
DC final, I think I'd been around NWSL before its inception. WPS, I mean, Lori has as well too. And like from a soccer perspective, like that DC final to me was the first time it felt like a proper final. Like,
Agree.
right, the investment in the marketing, the actual fireworks, like the signage. Like,
Yeah.
I know that stuff takes a while, but like that was the first
Prime
one I
time
was
on
like,
CBS. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
we were
Mhm.
sitting there. We're like, okay, this is proper, right? And you're right. There's reasons why before it wasn't, but like that is a bit of a full circle moment. That the players had a party prior to, like, Leslie Osborne snuck me into that Just Women's Sports, who's the host, right? So I guess she didn't really sneak me in, but no. Okay, so I'm gonna ask like a non-serious question, because I know
Great.
that Lori's got to get on a flight to go hang out in LA for like 30 days covering the women's Euros. Which is amazing,
Amazing.
Lori.
So
I'm
good.
like super like not jealous, but like just want to hang out. So I'll have the games on in the background and just randomly text you the referee decisions. But Jenny, you said you were horrible at soccer, but if you could
Mm-hmm.
play a position, what position would it be?
I mean, if we're talking dream scenario, what position would I
Yeah.
play? Goalie.
Yeah, dream big. Goalie.
Goalie. Yeah.
Really?
Still using my hands,
How
but
tall
I
are
need to be
you?
about a foot
Listen, I
taller.
love
I need to
this.
be about a
Not
foot
many
taller.
people are saying that, so I love it.
No.
Yeah, I'm 5'3", so I got a lot of ground to cover. Yeah, no,
You do.
I'm 5'2 3/4", but I tell people 5'3".
Shut
My
up. I'm
driver's
5'4" and
license
a
say
half. I tell
5'5".
people that
Yeah,
all the
that's good.
time. I'm like, I'm 5'4" and a half on a good day. I'm 5'5". So
That's it. That's it.
interesting. Keeper. I love it. So you're a little
Hmm.
crazy then, is what we're learning.
Maybe just a
Yeah,
touch.
that's
And
proper.
running isn't my jam. I don't want to like break it, like hardcore break a sweat and run a bunch. I definitely don't need to score any goals. But I do like the idea of protecting things, guarding things. Defense has been my
Okay.
jam in basketball. So,
Yeah.
and it might just be a
Okay.
default because I'm like not a good shooter, but maybe
No, I
gotta
love this
take,
answer. I
you
love
got,
this.
I do too. It's usually everyone always says like the goal scorer or something like that, or right? Maybe the center midfield and enforcer. So I
Yeah.
like that answer. So you just being all sports before we sign off, like and I think that's probably you're one of the best people to check on this, right? So this podcast is about soccer here in the United States. Like, how does the game grow? Like, how does it become a top leading like sport here in the United States? It being an international game. How do you see soccer, women's soccer tracking? Like WNBA is having its moment, right? And that's awesome. But how do you see soccer? What would soccer need to basically have that explosion as well?
I mean, I think it's happening right now. I think we're on the
Mm,
cusp. We're watching it blossom right now. I mean, it started, I mean, to me as a like very casual soccer fan, it started with the US women's national team, fighting for equal pay, and that just being on the cover of Time magazine, putting everything like right up front and in the open, and then putting the media on blast, putting and just having just incredible spokespeople at the forefront of representation. And now we've got like plenty of BIPOC, queer folks, non-binary folks, and just using the platform and the opportunity to speak their truth. And like all of those things matter. I mean, the WNBA knows, for years they've been doing that. And so I think that there are a couple things that are happening right now that we're witnessing. And then the massive investments and these like kind of valuations that nobody can unless they're a freaking sexist, like straight up sexist, can turn a blind eye to it. Like it is
mm-mm,
so obvious that if you're not investing and you're not taking part in what is, kind of the hottest thing to happen to sports in general in
mm.
decades, then get out of here with that noise. Like, fine, more for us, right? So like I think that we're just on the cusp, and sky's the limit. I've said
Mm.
this before, but women's sports and athletes have been doing so much with so little.
Mhm.
And now we're just
Yeah.
starting to get something. You ain't
And
seen
see the
nothing
returns
yet.
on it
Yeah,
already.
Exactly.
exactly.
You
And
ain't
it
seen
feels like a
nothing yet.
ton of investments because it's come from nothing. But like,
Exactly.
I mean, get even more and then it just like lights out, right? Like
Hmm.
everybody get ready because
Hmm. And then
it just feels like there's an explosion now in terms of everything, but it's like scratching the surface.
Yeah.
exactly.
We've
And
barely
what's
started.
what's really awesome is the idea that there's so much more research being done on the impact of women's sports and investment and representation and buying power and consumerism and who's watching, right?
Hmm.
And so all of those metrics are very different from men's sports and men's sports fandom. And so tapping into that is a whole other layer of frosting on this awesome women's sports cake. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even frosting. It's like another 10 layers of awesome.
We're building a cake right now. We're only in
We're
the
building a
base.
freaking
We're
cake.
putting a little bit of frosting on it, but this is a 10-tier cake. Let's go, baby.
Also,
I'll
side
leave the
note,
cooking to you.
Side note, that game on August 10th is the Cascadia rivalry. So it's
Sure.
versus
Oh,
Seattle.
dang.
So that'll be
I'm
it's
there.
a fun
Kev,
one. Yeah.
we're coming. Niall,
Exactly.
I don't know if you're done with the Euros. Yeah, these are our producers offline, so we'll see on that. But it's
I'm
Cascadia
there.
rivalry, baby.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
awesome. Well, Jenny, thank you for being on. Hopefully you remember our names. If not, we'll remember each other's faces.
For sure. For sure.
We'll come in and we'll harass you for sure. Have a good, great summer. I know we got women's Euros on. That's going to be incredible. Like, that is just a powerful tournament. So that's great to see through the clutter of what we call, the summer of soccer. But thanks, Jenny, for jumping on. I appreciate it. The Soccer Podcast USA. Thank you for being my host today. And for our guest
I
appearance
love
by
talking about
Lori.
the sports bra, everybody.
I
This is
love
great
it.
as the guest.
I have one more thing I want to plug.
Okay.
Is that the Sports
sure.
Bra is going to London on Friday to be at
shut up.
Style of Our Own, the women's sports pop-up in London. We're going to be at Style
perfect.
of Our Own. We're hosting 3 watch parties. One is for Lionesses. And then we've got a Pride party, London Pride we're there for. And then we're going to watch netball championships. So a bunch of watch parties in London this coming weekend. So
cool.
yep.
Love
And
that.
I'll be
Kev,
there.
Niall,
So if
we know
anyone's in
some
London,
people.
let's go.
We know some people over in England who kind of have control on some of these things. So we'll definitely let them. Next time, let me know. I'll jump on a plane and go directly into that. I love England. I need to come back.
You've got 3 whole days to maybe plan something.
I love it. What am I
No
doing this
pressure.
weekend?
No pressure.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jenny. That was amazing.
Thank you both.
Nice to meet
Really
you.
appreciate
Appreciate
it.
it.
Awesome.
Thanks. See ya.
See you soon.
Don't forget to follow us on the Soccer Podcast USA as we continue to bring you big names and bold opinions. That's it for our show. See you later.